Laurel Mintz is a brilliant marketer. She's the CEO of an extremely successful marketing agency. Her clients include companies like Facebook, Verizon, Saks Fifth Avenue, but a lot of small companies as well. And today, we're going to talk about how to build and deploy a successful marketing campaign A to Z. Brilliant. How can you help me? Like, what process do I need to go through to figure out what marketing targets do I need to set in order to support my sales goals?
Such a great question. Well, we obviously take them through a typical sales funnel, like a marketing funnel, that inverted triangle. And so the bottom of that funnel, as you well know, is that sale. But what we now know, because we're in such a saturated digital environment, is that it's taking up to 16 plus touch points before someone builds that know, like, trust factor. So our job in that initial conversation is to say, okay, this might be your sales goal, but we know that things convert at a 1 to 2% rate up this funnel. So what are the conversations? Where are the touch points? What have you built so far that's working and not working? And then in that conversation, it's also very creative, right? Like, we can come up with brilliant things off the top of our heads and say, well, what if you did this? Like, what if you just, have you thought of this? And ultimately that also builds a lot of trust and excitement. And that's the kind of client we want to work with, is someone that trusts us, believes in us, understands, even if they're not an expert and don't know their marketing goals, they believe that we know how to define them with them. It's a collective experience, not an us versus them or an us working for them. It's us working together.
I love this. So it's a collaborative experience, right? You
For
need to
sure.
have the people who understand the company, the product, the service, preferably the clients,
Mm-hmm.
but also the people who come with the crazy ideas and ideation and creativity and kind of build a blend out of that. So let's
Yeah.
say, okay, now you understand what their marketing goals are. And,
Mm-hmm.
just for people who are not from the field, give me an example of what are marketing goals per se.
So for a new company, a marketing goal might be as basic as building a website. It might be driving traffic to your website and converting to your database, because that is a really focused KPI that then can convert into a sales KPI, right? So really having clarity on that is an important starting point. But like you said, oftentimes they don't have any idea of any of that. And usually the messaging, positioning, and targeting is also undefined. So
Right.
sometimes we'll do a secondary session that is really just creatively focused, but focusing in on that who, what, where, when, why, how, really getting to the core why, the concept of why they believe they're different. Differentiation, as you know, is everything in marketing. And then we also have a really fun exercise we do called word vomit, where you're literally
Okay.
just bleh, just throwing up words on a page. And what we always tell them is, like, our job is to multitask the shit out of everything that we do. So if we're developing a list of all of the terms and emotions and colors and the things that you believe are related to your brand, we can take those at a later date, define them, and create a social tile out of them. So we're multitasking even in the building process, which is pretty exciting.
Brilliant. I think it's so interesting because you're touching again on that mix between, it's a mix between a structured process
Mm-hmm.
to, we got to go crazy and try stuff out, even if it doesn't make sense right now, because it will help us maybe paint a better picture of whatever it is that we need to do in the end of the process.
Yeah, I
So
call it being center brained,
that's pretty cool.
right? You got the analytical
Yeah,
side and the
yeah,
creative
yeah,
side. You've got to kind of be down the middle, you know?
yeah. So we know what the marketing goals are, and we started painting the picture of the why and the who and the when. What's
Mm-hmm.
the next step in your process that you take your clients in order to actually end up with a marketing campaign?
The next step is really a competitive analysis, because they can come to you and say, maybe they do know what their marketing goals are. Maybe they do have a defined budget, but they don't see on the back end what they're up against in terms of capturing that market share. So we use a listening software. We run all their platforms through it, as well as their direct competitors. And after that process, we can come back to them with a super detailed report that says, here's where you're at, here's where all your competitors are at, what keywords they're owning, what advertising spend they're spending, where they're at on social, and where the white space is. if you have this budget that you've now defined for us, you're not going to get anywhere close to that. So we can't fight in that same boxing ring. That's not going to work for us. We need to pivot and focus on something else, like super heavy content marketing, or if there's a channel that your competitors are not in, like let's say YouTube is a channel that a lot of brands aren't optimizing right now. Maybe that ends up being the focus of the conversation, instead of let's just do the Google ads, let's just do social ads, let's just do everything that everyone else has been doing. So we come to the table with that, again, that center brain mentality. Here's creative and here's what's possible in this, a beautiful universe, but here's what the actual data is telling us. And here's the cross section of both of those. So we take that listening software, we report that back, and then we overlay our marketing experts on top of it to define the next step in the process.
Brilliant. First of all, what's the name of the software? Because I'm now really, really curious.
It's called SEM Rush. It's the best one that we've found, and they have an agency model version that's super, super aggressive. But it's more than just the data. It's the data plus your expertise and the execution of that, of course. So the next step of the process might be cleanup, right? Because in that report, we can see that there might be like a lot of technical errors on the site, or we might have to back up and do creative and rebrand or something along those lines. And in that process, oftentimes we'll actually survey their market. So we'll get that human feedback through SurveyMonkey. Actually, they're about to do a whole piece on us because we use surveying so aggressively. Again, it's creative, but it's all backed up by data. Because even if I come to you with a creative campaign and I say, I think that this is going to land and your audience is going to convert and they're going to fucking love this, they might not. But the best way for us to, cover our asses is to say, like, look, we actually asked 100 people in your market, or we reached out to your specific database, and you can use those as sell-through opportunities. If you're selling a product or a service and you need real feedback from your real audience, first of all, there's no better set, to ask. And second of all, you can use it as a sell-through opportunity. If you're selling, call it water bottles, hey guys, we're trying to come up with a new tagline and new color theory. Here's 3 options, vote on them, and we'll give you $10 towards your next purchase. So I would say surveying is a really important next step, especially as it relates to the creative process, and doing that cleanup first and foremost on any technical errors that might make you, untenable. Maybe it's a UI UX issue, maybe it's a technical issue, to make you not searchable, not findable via the search engines. So there's a lot that has to happen in that process.
So now we're at the point that we know the target audience, we know the niche we want to go through, we know the channel we want to go after them because the data told us that, and we've cleaned up our dirty laundry in-house, so we're actually ready to take in more action. Next step.
Next step is define budget. How are we going to get new eyeballs on the brand, and what channels are we going to go after the most? And that, that first step of listening really helps us understand what channels are going to be most effective for them currently, like where are their biggest growth channels right now? And then again, where that white space is. So for example, if a brand isn't doing anything on the YouTube platform, most people don't understand or don't think about YouTube as a search engine, and it is the second largest search engine in the world. Yes. So if you have a limited budget, but you still want to drive new traffic to your website and you're not going to be able to compete for keywords in your space, you should do a branded keyword strategy and then a heavy content push, right? We call it shoot-a-palooza. So you'll see, I'm sure you saw on my website, we walk our own talk. So you'll see I have a ton of videos. They're, anywhere from 60 seconds to a few minutes. It's literally me changing my hair and makeup. It's all shot in one day. It's all keyword focused. And then what we do is we shoot it on YouTube. We have the media player on our website. So we're playing nice with that search engine. We translate it into written content. We put any keywords we missed in there. And then we're playing nice with both of those search engines. And that's all organic. That's prepaid. So that's just an example of what we would do on the execution side with a limited budget, but a content focus.
One of the things we started doing just to save us time, but it also works amazingly well when it goes to YouTube, is we know which keywords we want our clients to rank for. Right. So when we do interviews on their behalf, the first sentence we say, literally the first sentence is, today we will talk about, and then it's a keyworded research sentence. And that becomes the first sentence of the video on YouTube. And guess what YouTube does? It knows what you're saying. You can title it whatever you want, but they know how to listen to the videos and see what's the content. So if the first sentence is the content, is going to say, I'm going to use something from you. Today, we're going to talk about Paw Patrol. Then
Mhm.
they know this video is most likely about Paw Patrol, which, by the
Yeah.
way, I'm glad my kids are not in this conversation because they would derail this conversation completely. So
Mhm.
it's simple little tricks like this that allows you to actually then rank. And like you said, then you take this video and you chop it off and you put it on your website and you do a lot of other things with it. So far, we talked a lot about the technical aspect, which again has to support the creative aspect. But I
Mhm.
want to switch gears and talk about really the creative stuff and how to connect with people. And you said that before. You research that, you question them, you send a question, you talk with them over the phone. You're trying to
Mhm.
figure out what makes them tick. How to make the creative to connect for real with those people.
Well, first of all, there's no guarantee that that's ever going to happen, right? So I want to caveat it with that. But we go into our creative brainstorm process. We call it rapid creative ideation. And we literally do this process. It's much like what Google does when they're ideating a new technology, which is
Okay.
you get in a room, with people, you set a timer, and everyone brainstorms the shit out of what they think that creative campaign needs to look like. And then after that 10 minutes, everyone shares, and then you vote on one item that you think is the most easily executable, or the thing that you think is going to land. And then the wild and wacky idea that you think, if you had all the money in the world, this would be really fun to try and execute, right? And then ultimately you have to engage the client partner and see what is aligned with their value set and their budget. So there is a back and forth collaboration conversation that has to happen within that. And ultimately there are some boxes that it needs to fit into, but most of the ideas, they're just things that we come up with creatively. And that's why, again, I call ourselves the center-brained agency, because we look at all the data points and you can get all the numbers in the world, but ultimately we create from our gut, right? And we feel that we know what's going to land, and it's worked for us so far.
So I really want to ask about the data versus the human touch, right? Because the things we can measure is the action versus the emotion that we generate with people. And
Mhm.
yet, I think most people know that marketing is all about touching people on the emotional level. How do you measure beyond the click-through rate? Like, how do you know that you really made an impact with your campaign on people? Because I don't do that. I don't know how to do that. So if you do, I'm very, very open to learning.
Well, there's a couple things. One, AI software, really
Okay.
smart software, right? So on things like our social campaigns, we have an AI integration that can literally tell us you will get a 22% brand lift on your social channel if you use a person's face head on versus a 3/4 turn, or this color versus this color.
That's
So that's,
crazy.
again, using data to align the creative process with what you believe your audience is going to land with. Then the other is, again, just that gut and then the response to that. I'll give you an example. So we have the Tamara Mellon shoe brand. So Tamara Mellon was Jimmy Choo's co-founder. She launched her own brand a few years back. They came to us and they said, we've bought into this Create Cultivate conference, which is in 6 cities in 2 months, and we have not really thought about it. We don't even know what we're doing. Please help us. And so in 2 months, we ideated, fabricated, and executed an entire concept that was travelable for these,
Wow.
events. But the most amazing magical moment was the mirror moment with the hashtag that they were putting up, and they wanted to just put up hashtag Tamara Mellon. And I said, guys, come on, like, we can do better than this. Like, let's do something that's a little bit irreverent. Let's do something that's fun. And I said, let's do hashtag flash your melons. And it was one of those ideas that just came to me. And they were like, ooh, I don't know. This is a women's brand. I just feel like that might be offensive. And I was like, okay, look, let's do this. We'll print both clings. We'll throw the one that I think is going to land up. If in that first day you get pushback or negative PR or anything, then we'll swap it out and you can have your boring ass Tamara Mellon hashtag. And they're like, okay, fair. And in that one day, they got more social engagement than in the entire 3-year history of the brand because of that one hashtag, which came directly from my gut.
I want to touch on one last thing you said, because I think it's brilliant. And again, I think it's just good marketing. Just A/B test everything. Like,
For
I'm a
sure.
huge,
Yeah.
huge believer in A/B testing.